The crimson plasma beam seared through the morning air, missing Kestrel Hawthorne's head by inches as he dove behind the twisted wreckage of what used to be a Walmart. The acrid smell of vaporized concrete filled his nostrils, mixing with the metallic tang of alien technology and the smoky scent of burning mesquite. 3 years ago, he'd been fixing wind turbines across the Texas Panhandle. Now he was humanity's last hope against the Velthari Dominion. The aliens had made one critical mistake when they invaded Earth. They underestimated Texas. Kestrel peered around the debris, his weathered hands gripping the modified plasma rifle he'd cobbled together from salvaged Velthari tech. The weapon hummed with barely contained energy, its jury-rigged cooling system hissing steam in the desert heat. Across the shattered parking lot, 3 Velthari hunters stalked through the ruins, their crystalline exoskeletons gleaming like black diamonds in the harsh sunlight. The hunters were apex predators from the Velthari homeworld of Nexus Prime, each standing 12 feet tall, with 4 arms ending in razor-sharp talons. Their elongated skulls housed brains, capable of processing tactical data faster than any human computer, and their natural electromagnetic fields could disrupt most human technology within 50 yards. They were perfect killing machines, designed by evolution and enhanced by Velthari biotechnology. But they'd never faced a stubborn Texan with nothing left to lose. Kestrel's mind flashed back to the day the invasion began. The Velthari had arrived in massive city-sized vessels, blotting out the sun across every major population center on Earth. Their ultimatum had been simple: submit to the Dominion and serve as a slave species, or face extinction. Most of humanity had chosen submission after the aliens demonstrated their power by glass-grayering New York, London, and Tokyo simultaneously. Texas had chosen differently. Governor Raleigh Braswell had been the first world leader to tell the aliens exactly where. They could shove their ultimatum, using language that would have made a roughneck blush. Within hours, the Lone Star State became ground zero for humanity's resistance. The Velthari had expected easy conquest. Instead, they found themselves bogged down in a guerrilla war against the population that had been preparing for the end times since before the Civil War. The aliens controlled the cities and major transportation hubs, but the vast Texas wilderness belonged to the resistance. Men and women who'd spent their lives hunting, ranching, and surviving in one of America's harshest environments proved surprisingly adept at asymmetric warfare against an interstellar empire. Kestrel had lost everything in the first wave of attacks. His wife Melody, his twin daughters Sage and Briar, all vaporized when the Velthari scorched Lubbock from orbit. He'd been working a turbine farm 30 miles away when the sky turned white, then black. By the time he'd made it back to town, there was nothing left but glass and shadows. That was when Kestrel Hawthorne, wind turbine technician, had died. What emerged from the ashes was something else entirely. The first hunter rounded the corner of a collapsed gas station, its 4 eyes scanning for movement. Kestrel held his breath, finger hovering over the rifle's trigger. The alien's electromagnetic field crackled against the modified shielding he'd installed in his weapon. Another innovation born from 3 years of desperate warfare. The resistance had learned to adapt. They'd learned to improvise. Most importantly, they'd learned to kill. The hunter's head exploded in a shower of ichor and crystal fragments as Kestrel's plasma bolt found its mark. The other 2 aliens wheeled toward his position, their hunting calls echoing across the wasteland like the cries of prehistoric birds. Kestrel was already moving, his boots pounding against sun-baked asphalt as he sprinted toward his next position. Behind him, the hunters gave chase, their massive forms moving with terrifying grace. The war was far from over. 3 hours later, Kestrel emerged from the storm drain system beneath what used to be downtown Amarillo, plasma rifle slung across his back and hunter blood drying on his boots. The underground network of tunnels, sewers, and maintenance passages had become the Resistance's highway system, allowing them to move unseen beneath the Veltharius aerial surveillance. He surfaced in the basement of Maddox's salvage yard, where the familiar sounds of welding torches and grinding metal greeted him like an old friend's voice. The salvage yard served as one of dozens of hidden weapon manufacturing facilities scattered across the Texas underground, each one producing the modified firearms and improvised explosives that kept the resistance fighting. "About damn time," Hawthorne growled Cypress Maddox, not looking up from the plasma cannon she was assembling. The 60-year-old former NASA engineer had gray hair pulled back in a utilitarian ponytail and grease-stained hands that could build anything from scrap metal in pure spite. The Bastrop cell's been screaming for reinforcements since dawn. Kestrel wiped sweat from his forehead, leaving a streak of alien blood across his temple. 3 hunters down, but they'll send more. "How's the new batch coming along?" Cypress gestured toward a table laden with modified weapons. Each rifle had been built from salvaged Velthari technology, human ingenuity, and whatever materials they could scavenge from the ruins of civilization. The plasma batteries were from car batteries and solar panels. The targeting systems came from repurposed gaming consoles. The cooling units were built from air conditioning compressors and medical-grade nitrogen tanks. It shouldn't have worked. By all rights, the weapons should have exploded in their users' hands, or failed after the first shot. Instead, they'd proven remarkably effective at killing aliens, a fact that had earned the Texas Resistance a fearsome reputation throughout the Velthari Dominion. 47 functional rifles, 12 heavy cannons, and enough ammunition to keep shooting for a month, Cypress reported with grim satisfaction. "Riverbend's people also sent us something interesting." She led him to a corner of the workshop, where a massive device hummed with barely contained energy. It looked like someone had made it a radio telescope with a particle accelerator, then wrapped the offspring in duct tape and prayers. Cables snaked across the floor, connecting the device to a bank of car batteries and what appeared to be several microwave ovens. "What in the hell is that thing?" Kestrel asked. "Electromagnetic pulse cannon," Cypress said proudly. "One shot can knock out every piece of Velthari tech in a 3-mile radius. Course, it'll also fry every electronic device on our side, but sometimes you gotta break a few eggs." Kestrel studied the weapon with professional interest. 3 years of constant warfare had taught him to evaluate every piece of equipment in terms of tactical advantage. The EMP cannon could level the playing field in a major engagement, but it would have to be used strategically. "How portable is it?" "About as portable as a grand piano," Cypress admitted. "But Riverbend's working on a smaller version. Give him another month, and he might have something we can mount on a pickup truck." The mention of Dr. Evander Riverbend brought a rare smile to Kestrel's face. The former MIT physics professor had been vacationing at South Padre Island when the invasion began. Instead of fleeing, he'd somehow managed to reverse engineer Velthari technology, using nothing but a beach house full of electronics and an apparently limitless supply of tequila. His innovations had single-handedly kept the Resistance competitive with an interstellar empire. "Speaking of Riverbend," Cypress continued, pulling a datapad from her workbench, "he sent along some interesting intelligence. Seems our friends upstairs are planning something big." The datapad showed surveillance footage from one of their hidden cameras in Houston. Massive Velthari transport ships were landing at what used to be NASA Johnson Space Center, disgorging thousands of troops and enough equipment to level half the state. "Looks like a staging operation," Kestrel observed. "They're massing for a final push. That's what we figure. Question is, can we hit them before they're ready?" Kestrel studied the footage for several minutes, his tactical mind processing possibilities and probabilities. The Velthari were powerful, but they were also predictable. They relied on overwhelming force and superior technology, but they'd never adapted to the chaos and improvisation that defined human warfare. "Get word to all the cells," he said finally. "It's time to show these bastards what Texas hospitality really looks like." Outside, The sun was setting over the ruins of Amarillo, painting the sky the color of blood and fire. Somewhere in the darkness, alien predators hunted for human prey. But in the underground workshops and hidden bunkers, the sons and daughters of Texas were preparing to hunt back. The resistance was about to go on the offensive. The attack began at 0300 hours with Ripa-Ben's EMP cannon lighting up the pre-dawn darkness like a purple lightning strike from the gods themselves. 3 miles of Velthari defensive positions went dark simultaneously as their advanced technology fried in the electromagnetic pulse, leaving the aliens blind and confused in the Texas night. Kestrel led the first wave. 43 resistance fighters armed with plasma rifles and decades of collective rage. They emerged from storm drains, abandoned buildings, and hidden tunnels like vengeful ghosts, their weapons spitting coherent energy into the ranks of disoriented aliens. The Velthari had expected another guerrilla raid, not a coordinated assault, by an enemy that had learned to fight like them. The former NASA facility had been transformed into a fortress city, with towering spires of crystalline technology reaching toward the stars like alien prayers. Velthari warriors moved through the complex in precise formations, their bioluminescent armor pulsing with tactical data and target acquisition systems. Each warrior stood 8 feet tall and possessed the strength to tear apart an armored vehicle with their bare hands. But strength meant nothing when your entire sensory network had just been reduced to slag. "Bravo team, hit the north perimeter," Kestrel shouted into his radio as he dove behind a overturned Humvee. Plasma bolts seared the air around him, leaving glowing craters in the concrete. "Charlie team, take out those communication relays." The resistance fighters moved with the fluid precision of a pack predator. Each warrior had been forged in 3 years of asymmetric warfare, learning to use speed, cunning, and intimate knowledge of the terrain to overcome superior firepower. They struck hard, disappeared into the shadows, then struck again from an entirely different direction. Captain Winona Crenshaw lead Charlie team through the labyrinthine maintenance tunnels beneath the complex. The former Marine demolitions expert had lost her left arm to a Velthari blade 6 months ago, but she'd adapted by mounting a plasma cannon directly to her shoulder prosthetic. Now, she moved through the darkness like a one-woman artillery battery, her weapon systems humming with lethal intent. "Charges set on the primary communication array," she reported through her throat mic. "Detonation in 30 seconds. The explosion lit up the night sky like a newborn star, sending chunks of alien technology tumbling toward the Earth in graceful arcs. Secondary explosions rippled through the complex as ammunition depots and fuel stores caught fire, creating a hellscape of destruction that would have impressed Dante himself in the command center of the Velthari facility. Supreme War Commander Kethvaran watched his carefully planned invasion dissolve into chaos. The human resistance had somehow managed to coordinate a massive assault, using nothing but salvaged equipment and primitive radio communications. It should have been impossible. "Deploy the Nexus guards," he commanded, his crystalline voice cutting through the cacophony of alarms and damage reports. "Activate all hunter packs. These primitives must be crushed immediately." The Nexus guards were the elite of the Velthari military, genetically engineered super soldiers with enhanced strength, speed, and intelligence. Each guard could easily kill a dozen human soldiers in single combat. Kethvaran had been saving them for the final conquest of Earth's major population centers. Now he would waste them on Texas rebels. Kestrel saw the massive figures emerging from the central spire and knew immediately that the game had changed. The Nexus guards moved differently than regular Velthari warriors, with a fluid grace that spoke of perfect predatory instincts. Their weapons weren't the standard plasma rifles, but exotic energy cannons that could punch through tank armor. "All teams, we've got big uglies incoming," he broadcast. "Implement Protocol 7. Protocol 7 was their most desperate gambit, a tactic born from months of careful planning, and the kind of reckless courage that had won the Alamo. Every resistance fighter in the assault force would converge on a single point, overwhelming the enemy through sheer concentrated firepower, rather than trying to match them, soldier for soldier. The convergence point was the main reactor facility at the heart of the complex. If they could destroy it, the explosion would take out half the Velthari force and cripple their operations for months. Winona's team fought their way through waves of Velthari warriors, their improvised weapons spitting death in the confined spaces of the maintenance tunnels. Above ground, Kestrel's assault teams carved a bloody path through the outer defenses, leaving a trail of alien corpses in their wake. But the Nexus guards were closing in, and time was running out. "Riverbend, we need that backup plan," Kestrel shouted into his radio as he emptied his rifle's power cell into a charging Velthari hunter. "Whatever you've been cooking up, now's the time." The response came not in words, but in action. High above the battlefield, something that looked like a falling star streaked across the night sky, trailing fire and impossible speed. It slammed into the central spire with the force of a guided missile, sending shockwaves through the entire complex. Dr. Evander Riverbend had turned himself into a human kinetic weapon, using a modified aircraft and every piece of explosive they could spare to deliver the killing blow. His sacrifice bought them the opening they needed. For Texas. Winona screamed as she triggered the final demolition charges. The reactor facility disappeared in a ball of white-hot plasma that briefly outshone the moon. The destruction of the Houston facility sent ripples of shock through the highest levels of the Velthari Dominion. In the crystal spires of Nexus Prime, 800 light-years from the primitive world called Earth, the Council of Hierarchs convened an emergency session to address what they euphemistically termed the Texas problem. Supreme Hierarch Velthera stood before the assembled council, her towering form crackling with barely contained fury. The ancient leader had overseen the conquest of 47 worlds, adding billions of subjects to the Dominion's slave populations. Never before had a primitive species inflicted such casualties on her forces. The humans of this Texas region have destroyed 17 facilities, eliminated 4 hunter packs, and killed a Nexus Guard unit, she announced, her voice resonating through the chamber like crystalline thunder. They have also captured and reverse-engineered our technology, turning our own weapons against us. The implications were staggering. In 3,000 years of expansion, the Dominion had never encountered a species capable of adapting their technology so quickly. Most civilizations either submitted immediately or were obliterated within days. The humans of Earth were proving to be an entirely different breed of problem. Recommendations, Velthera demanded. War Commander Zenthakar stepped forward, his massive frame scarred from a dozen campaigns. Complete orbital bombardment of the Texas region. Reduce it to molten glass and be done with this embarrassment. Unacceptable, interjected Science Commander Nex Volan. The humans have demonstrated remarkable adaptability and innovation. Their genetic material and technological insights could prove valuable to the Dominion. We must capture specimens for study. Meanwhile, in the ruins of Houston, Kestrel picked through the wreckage of the Velthari facility with the methodical precision of a scavenger. Every piece of alien technology could be stripped down, analyzed, and repurposed into weapons for the Resistance. In 3 years of warfare, they'd learned to waste nothing. The victory had cost them dearly. Riverbend was gone, along with 14 other fighters who'd made the ultimate sacrifice to destroy the facility. But they'd struck a blow that would resonate throughout the galaxy, proving that humanity wouldn't go quietly into the night. Kestrel, you need to see this, called out Sage Montoya, a former software engineer who'd become their chief technology analyst. She was crouched beside what looked like a crystalline data core, its faceted surface still pulsing with faint energy. What? Is it communications array? I think it was connected to their home network when we hit the facility. Sage's eyes gleamed with possibilities. If I can crack the encryption, we might be able to access their command structure. The idea sent a chill down Kestrel's spine. Intelligence was the lifeblood of any resistance movement, but penetrating an interstellar empire's communication network seemed impossible even by their standards. How long would you need? Give me 3 days, and a lot of coffee. Sage replied with the kind of confidence that had made her a legend in Silicon Valley before the invasion. Cypress can help with the hardware modifications. 3 days later, they had their breakthrough. The Velthari communication network was vast beyond human comprehension, connecting thousands of worlds across multiple galactic spiral arms. Ships, colonies, research facilities, and military installations all reported to a central command structure that operated with clockwork precision, and it was completely unprepared for a computer virus written by a caffeinated software engineer from Austin. I call it the Texas two-step, Sage announced proudly as she uploaded her creation into the Velthari network. It's designed to corrupt their tactical databases while replicating itself through their communication relays. The virus was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of trying to destroy the network outright, it introduced subtle errors into the Velthari command and control systems. Troop movements were misdirected. Supply convoys were sent to the wrong coordinates. Intelligence reports became increasingly unreliable as the virus spread through the network like digital cancer. Within 48 hours, the Dominion's military efficiency began to degrade noticeably. Units reported to the wrong commanders. Reinforcements arrived at battles that had ended days earlier. Critical intelligence was delayed or corrupted beyond recognition. For an empire built on rigid hierarchy and precise coordination, it was catastrophic. On Nexus Prime, Supreme Hierarch, Velthara watched her carefully ordered universe dissolve into chaos. The primitive humans had somehow infiltrated their most secure communication networks, introducing an element of uncertainty that made effective command nearly impossible. Hierarch, reported her chief intelligence officer, the corruption appears to be spreading through our quantum communication relays. If we don't isolate the infected systems soon, it could compromise the entire network. The choice was clear. Maintain communication with their forces throughout the galaxy and risk total system failure, or cut off entire sectors to prevent the virus from spreading. Either option would cripple their ability to coordinate military operations. Implement Directive Omega, Velthara commanded with cold fury. Prepare the Annihilation Fleet for immediate deployment to the Sol system. The Annihilation Fleet was the Dominion's ultimate weapon, a collection of planet-killer vessels reserved for civilizations that posed an existential threat to Velthari supremacy. It had been deployed only twice in 3 millennia, both times resulting in the complete sterilization of entire star systems. Now the humans of Texas had earned the same fate as species that had threatened the very foundations of the Dominion. In the underground bunkers of the Resistance, Kestrel felt a chill. That had nothing to do with the Texas winter. Something big was coming. The first sign of impending doom arrived on a Tuesday morning, when every piece of Velthari technology on Earth suddenly went silent. For 3 years, the Resistance had monitored alien communications, tracking troop movements, and identifying targets through intercepted transmissions. Now the electromagnetic spectrum was eerily quiet, as if the entire invasion force had simply vanished. Kestrel stood in the communications center beneath Austin, watching Sage frantically work her keyboards as she tried to re-establish contact with their surveillance network. Banks of jury-rigged monitors displayed nothing but static and empty frequencies, where once they'd shown a steady stream of alien chatter. "They've gone dark," Sage reported, her face pale with worry. Complete communication blackout across all Velthari frequencies. Either we killed their entire network or they're preparing for something that requires radio silence, Kestrel finished grimly. He'd seen this tactic before in the early days of the invasion, when the aliens would shut down all communications before launching a major offensive. The answer came 18 hours later, when the stars began to disappear, massive. Shadows blotted out constellation after constellation, as ships the size of mountains took position in Earth's orbit. The Velthari annihilation fleet had arrived, and it dwarfed anything humanity had ever imagined. Each vessel was a fusion of advanced technology and organic architecture, growing like living coral into weapons platforms, capable of reducing entire continents too. Dr. Indira Kowalski, the former astrophysicist who'd become the Resistance's chief science officer, studied the orbital telemetry with growing horror. 37 capital ships, each one approximately 50 kilometers in length. Based on their positioning, they're preparing for simultaneous orbital bombardment of every population center on the planet. Time until they're in position. Kestrel asked. 6 hours, maybe less. The underground command center erupted in activity as resistance cells across Texas received their final orders. There would be no retreat, no surrender, no desperate last stands in hidden bunkers. If humanity was going to die, they would die fighting. But Kestrel had one last card to play, hidden beneath the ruins of CERN's Texas Research Facility. A team of physicists led by Dr. Mikhail Petrov had been working on humanity's most ambitious project, using salvaged Velthari technology and theoretical research that pushed the boundaries of known physics. They'd constructed what could only be described as a dimensional resonance cannon. The weapon was based on a simple but terrifying principle. If matter and energy were truly interchangeable, then a sufficient concentration of both could tear holes in the fabric of space-time itself. In theory, the cannon could create artificial wormholes, allowing instantaneous travel across vast distances. In practice, it might destroy the entire solar system. We get one shot, Petrov explained, as teams of technicians made final adjustments to the massive device. The Russian physicist looked like he hadn't slept in weeks, his eyes bloodshot from staring at equations that described forces beyond human comprehension. If the calculations are correct, we can create a temporary wormhole directly into the heart of their command ship. And, if the calculations are wrong, Petrov shrugged with the fatalistic humor of a man who'd already accepted his own death, then, we create a black hole and take everyone with us. Either way, the war ends today. The dimensional cannon required enormous amounts of power, more electricity than the entire Texas power grid had generated in its heyday. To fuel it, the Resistance had spent months secretly connecting every available power source. Solar farms, wind turbines, hydroelectric plants, and even the reactors from abandoned nuclear facilities. The resulting energy surge would be visible from orbit, as teams across Texas brought their power systems online. The Velthari fleet commanders noticed the unusual energy readings emanating from the planet's surface. Supreme War Commander Kethvaron, now in personal command of the Annihilation Fleet, studied the sensor data with growing unease. The humans are attempting something, he reported to Supreme Hierarch Velthara via quantum communicator. Massive energy buildup across multiple locations. Power levels are approaching theoretical maximums for their technology. It matters not, Velthara replied with cold indifference. Begin the bombardment. Reduce their world to ash, and be done with this embarrassment. The order went out across the fleet. All ships were to commence planetary bombardment simultaneously, ensuring complete destruction of Earth's biosphere. Targeting systems locked onto major population centers, while weapons capacitors charged with enough energy to boil oceans. In the underground facility, Petrov's team made their final preparations. The dimensional cannon had been aimed not at the largest ship in the fleet, but at the one showing the most sophisticated quantum signatures. If their intelligence was correct, it housed the Velthari command structure. Power at 98%, reported the chief engineer. Dimensional matrix stable. Target locked. Kestrel stood beside the massive weapon, feeling the air itself vibrate with barely contained energy. Through the facility's periscope system, He could see the alien fleet beginning to move into bombardment formation. Death was descending from the stars, and humanity had perhaps minutes left to live. "Do it," he said quietly. Petrov's finger hovered over the firing control for one eternal moment, then pressed down. Reality screamed. The dimensional cannon tore, a hole in space-time itself, creating a passage between the Texas underground and the command deck of the Velthari flagship. For a fraction of a second, two locations separated by hundreds of miles existed in the same physical space. Through that impossible doorway stepped Kestrel Hawthorne, plasma rifle in hand and murder in his heart. Behind him came 43 of Texas's finest warriors, ready to bring the fight directly to their enemy's doorstep. The Velthari command ship existed in a realm of crystalline beauty and organic horror that defied human comprehension. Kestrel and his team emerged from the dimensional rift into a vast cathedral of living technology, where walls pulsed with bioluminescent networks, and the very air hummed with psychic energy. Overhead, a dome of transparent crystal revealed the starfield beyond, with Earth hanging like a blue marble in the infinite black dot. Supreme War Commander Kethvarin spun toward the impossible breach in his flagship's hull, his four arms reaching for weapons that suddenly seemed inadequate. The human warriors materialized like demons from some primitive hell, their crude projectile weapons already spitting death into the ranks of his bridge crew. "Impossible," he hissed in his crystalline language. "Dimensional travel requires technologies beyond your comprehension." Kestrel's response was a plasma bolt that took off the alien commander's left arm at the shoulder. "Everything's impossible until some crazy bastard proves it ain't." The battle for the command ship became a running firefight through corridors that defied Euclidean geometry. Velthari warriors materialized from hidden alcoves and weapon ports, their advanced targeting systems struggling to track enemies who fought with the desperate cunning of cornered predators. The humans moved like wolves through an alien maze, using their superior knowledge of close-quarters combat to overcome technological disadvantage. Captain Winona Crenshaw led her team through what appeared to be the ship's main armory, her shoulder-mounted PLASMA cannon carving through ranks of crystalline soldiers. The Velthari weapons were beautiful, elegant constructions of living metal and quantum matrices. They were also surprisingly fragile when hit with high explosive charges. "Engineering section secured," she reported through her throat mic. "Their power core is some kind of artificial star. If we can destabilize the containment field." Negative, Kestrel interrupted as he fought his way toward the command center. "We need to capture their leader alive. Intelligence is more valuable than destruction." The Resistance had learned many hard lessons in 3 years of warfare, but perhaps the most important was that dead enemies told no tales. If they could capture the Velthari command structure, they might finally understand their enemy's weaknesses and long-term plans. Supreme Hierarch Velthara materialized on the command deck in a cascade of quantum energy, her ancient form crackling with barely contained power. She stood 15 feet tall, her crystalline exoskeleton scarred by millennia of conquest and warfare. In her 6 arms, she carried weapons that could reduce mountains to dust, relics of technologies older than human civilization. "So," she said in perfect English, her voice resonating through harmonics that made reality itself shiver. "The primitive species that calls itself human has finally crawled from its muddy world to face the Dominion directly. How refreshingly suicidal." Kestrel leveled his rifle at the ancient creature's center mass, finger tight on the trigger. Around him, his remaining warriors took defensive positions behind whatever cover they could find. The command deck was vast enough to hold a small town, its organic architecture providing dozens of vantage points and firing positions. "Your war ends here," he said simply. "Call off your fleet and withdraw from Earth, or we'll show you what happens when you pick a fight with Texas." Velthara's laughter was like the sound of breaking crystal. "You understand nothing, primitive. The Dominion spans 10,000 worlds and controls the resources of entire galactic sectors. Earth is nothing more than a minor inconvenience. Then why do you send your best troops to deal with a minor inconvenience? The question hung in the air between them like a challenge. Velthara's multifaceted eyes studied the human warrior with something approaching respect. In 3 millennia of conquest, she had never encountered a species capable of inflicting such casualties on her forces. You fought well, she admitted. But ultimately, you are alone. When this ship falls, my fleet will reduce your world to atomic particles. Your resistance dies with you. Maybe, Kestrel agreed, but you won't be around to see it. The firefight that followed defied description. Velthara moved with the fluid grace of a creature evolved for perfect warfare, her ancient weapons carving through matter itself with casual ease. The human warriors responded with the desperate courage of the doomed, pouring every remaining shot into their target while their comrades fell around them. In the end, it came down to mathematics. The Velthari hierarch was powerful beyond measure, but she was still a biological entity operating within the laws of physics. Eventually, even her exotic shields and enhanced physiology couldn't withstand the concentrated firepower of 43 humans who absolutely refused to die quietly. Kestrel stood over the fallen alien ruler, his rifle's barrel glowing red-hot from continuous fire. Around him, the command ship's systems flickered and failed as their leader's death triggered automated shutdown procedures. Through the crystal dome overhead, he could see the massive fleet beginning to drift aimlessly, their coordination broken by the loss of their supreme commander. "This is Kestrel to all Texas resistance cells," he broadcast on all frequencies. "The head of the snake is cut off. Hit them while they're confused." Across Earth's surface, human fighters emerged from their hidden bunkers and shelters. The fleet, suddenly leaderless and operating without centralized command, found themselves facing attacks from 1,000 different directions simultaneously. Ships that had been designed to bombard planets proved surprisingly vulnerable to boarding actions by humans, who'd spent 3 years learning to kill aliens with their bare hands. As the battle raged in orbit above, Kestrel made his way to the ship's communication center. The quantum transmitters were still functional, their crystalline arrays reaching across the galaxy to connect with the vast Velthari network. With Sage's virus still corrupting their systems and their supreme leader dead, the Dominion was experiencing its first taste of genuine chaos in 3,000 years. He composed a message that would be transmitted to every Velthari world, every military installation, every government facility throughout their empire. "This is Kestrel Hawthorne of Earth, representing the Terran resistance. Your supreme hierarch is dead. Your fleet is broken. Your invasion has failed. Return to your worlds and never come back, or we'll show you what happens when you mess with humanity." The message went out across the galaxy at faster-than-light speeds, carrying with it recordings of the battle, tactical analyses of human weapons, and detailed intelligence on Velthari weaknesses that the Resistance had compiled over 3 years of warfare. Within hours, the first Velthari ships began withdrawing from Earth's orbit. Within days, reports reached Earth of uprisings on dozens of Dominion worlds, as enslaved species realized that their masters could be defeated. Within months, the 1,000-year-old Velthari Empire would collapse into civil war and revolution. But that was still in the future. For now, Kestrel stood on the bridge of an alien flagship, watching the sun rise over a free Earth. The war was over. Humanity had survived. And somewhere in the ruins of Texas, the wind still blew free across the plains where his daughters used to play. The rebellion had become a revolution, and the revolution had become the salvation of not just humanity, but every enslaved species throughout the galaxy. One stubborn Texan with nothing left to lose had lit a fire that would burn across the stars for generations to come. In the end, that was the most human thing of all, turning a fight for survival into a fight for everyone's freedom. The Lone Star had become a beacon of hope for the entire galaxy.